Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, folks. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio on April 27th, 2016. This is your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting Wednesdays from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't. On the show today, I'm going to be doing something I don't think I've ever done before. I'm going to try to bring ET and UFO fiction to real life, courtesy of my guest, of course, Michael Nardo. Never actually, to my knowledge or remembrance, have any recollection of bringing on a person on my show who was known for writing a fictional book that was like truth under the guise of fiction in some regard. His book, The Beginning, fictional story, has some basis in real life, metaphysical, spiritual, and extraterrestrial fact. I'm going to let him give a Cliff's Notes version of his book. I'll give him the floor to do it. Michael Nardo was kind of concerned he wouldn't get on because I emailed him Saturday and yesterday, and I got no response. But about an hour ago, I got an email from him saying, "Are we still on for tonight?" So everything is cool, and I believe this is him in the queue here. Area code 302. Michael, if that is you, I will get you on at no later than 10 after the hour. Just a couple quick things about you. You are the founder of a full-service IT consulting firm located in Delaware called Future Tech Consulting. FutureTech.com is the link to that. Kind of interesting how someone who found something like that can be known for bringing ET and UFO fiction to real life. I'll give him his take on that and ask if anybody's found it odd that someone who's a founder of a full-service IT consulting firm of all businesses would be known not for that, but for bringing ET and UFO fiction to real life. His book can be bought at Amazon. I have the link in the video description here where you guys can buy that. But first, as usual, we are going to do the news courtesy of Alex Jones and company at InfoWars. If you guys will just give me a moment here. I have to do this every time I do the show and get on this. I want to make sure I reload the page so that all the recent articles get on. So let me, okay, almost done here. Just another 5 seconds. Okay. First article, Millennials Reject Capitalism. A Harvard study fails to point out a difference between capitalism and crony capitalism. Chalk it up to the dismal job public education does teaching young people about history, economics, and politics. Yes, they most certainly do. In fact, a couple years ago, I sent an email to my alma mater high school and told them that the last 13 years of my life would have been a lot more different if they told me and all the other students in that school that the official story of 9/11 is a fraud, among other things. And there were a lot of other things I told them in that email. And they actually told the police that I sent that to them, I guess because I freaked them out so much with the stuff I told them. But, hey, that's actually, I'm glad they did that because maybe that'll inspire the police to wake up too. But anyway, yes, public education does a bad job teaching people about history, economics, and politics. And naturally, there isn't going to be much of a difference between capitalism and crony capitalism or communism for that matter. Many would say communism and capitalism are two different versions of the same type of business or lifestyle. I mean, we could argue all day as to whether there's any truth to that idea. But yes, the world society did change after Karl Marx, a globalist puppet, came along to make up that whole communism and how it would be good for society when it's obviously not. All right, but anyway, next article, video NC. I guess that means North Carolina. Officials enable reporters posing as tranny bathroom sexual predators. Boy, is this ever going to stop appearing in the news? Are transgender bathrooms the ultimate cover for sexual predators? Undercover reporters posing as transvestite perverts filmed North Carolina University officials turning a blind eye to stark admissions. Opposite-sex bathrooms would be used for sexual deviancy purposes. All right, I'm really not going to give my take on this this whole thing about whether transvestites can be allowed to use their opposite-sex bathroom and whether it's okay or whether it's not okay. I'm going to inspire everybody to go to the YouTube channel Dave Champion, very popular guy in the patriot and political movement, very knowledgeable. He makes sense of everything. He recently did a short video on bathrooms in this regard, and he kind of makes sense of the whole thing. So, well, basically he says that letting people use opposite-sex bathrooms is going to cause all hell to break loose in terms of the sexual predator and rapist and harassers and all the other stuff like that involving sex. And he says, well, that's ridiculous. That's just what a lot of the insane people, I think, on the radical right, not the left, but the right would assert that. So don't believe that. But then again, is it a good or bad idea? I'm not going to comment on that. Anyway, next article. Lutheran leader claims Jesus was a hermaphrodite. Jesus was intersex, influential pastor says. Amid the national debate over transsexual bathrooms, here we go again, an influential Lutheran pastor claims Jesus was intersex. Okay, well, the biblical Jesus, did he exist? No. Well, actually, there was well, this is not me talking. This is Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartz is talking. Jesus did exist. He was a solar being, meaning he was a human incarnate of the sun, but his story in the Bible has been greatly twisted, and the vast majority of stuff is not true or can't even be called partially true. He didn't die on the cross, among other things, Bartz asserts. So, did all the people in religions exist at some point throughout history? Probably yes, but their stories have all been twisted. That's my take on how it works, because religions, many are waking up to the fact they're designed to brainwash you and suppress your consciousness. And although you have the right to take up one, the First Amendment says so, bless the First Amendment. But to compare this whole thing with Jesus and having anything to do with transgender bathrooms is ridiculous. Our next article, City Council bans travel to, here we go again, City Council bans travel to anti-transgender bathroom states. Texas Capitol supporting citizens' right to freedom of travel. On Monday, April 25th, the City of Austin's Human Rights Commission voted on a recommendation to ban all official travel and business with the states of Mississippi and North Carolina. There's a video here dealing with Target. Target was recently in the news for, I think, allowing transgender bathrooms, and I have a relative who works at a Target. I did not have any say in the petition. There are some petitions that I don't sign or that I don't want to have any say in, and this whole issue is one of them. So it has nothing to do with the fact that a relative works there. But Texas suppressing the right to freedom of travel simply because of the bathroom states. Yes, well, I mean, they do not have authority to regulate our travel of the roads for non-commercial purposes. Anybody who listens to Eddie Craig of Rule of All Radio would know that. But I don't have time to look at the details on this. I got to continue. There's 4 articles left. Chuck Norris calls out sky criminals for chemtrails. Geoengineering program picked apart by world champion martial artist. Actor and activist Chuck Norris calls out the sky criminals in his latest op-ed, examining several pieces of evidence showing a global geoengineering scheme may possibly be underway. Well, of course, it's underway, and there's a lot of technology that can be used to get rid of chemtrails. At the recent Free Your Mind conference that I was at, one of the speakers talked about how there is metaphysical technology, I believe dealing with orgone and crystal, that can be used to, if you put it under a chemtrail, it will dissipate the chemtrail. It'll work better if you lay it out in, I think, certain geometrical patterns. That video should, in the not-too-distant future, be uploaded to the Free Your Mind conference YouTube channel, as should all the other presentations, so people can get a better take on what that was all about. But good thing Chuck Norris is deciding my reputation is not important, even though I'm a well-known rich actor. I could care less about my reputation now. I'm going to save humanity, and hopefully lots of pop culture icons will do the same thing. All right, next article, on the 30th anniversary of Chernobyl, here's what we are still not being told. Devastation continues decades later. On the 30th anniversary of the world's worst nuclear catastrophe yet, a new report shows radioactive contaminants from the 1986 Chernobyl explosion in Ukraine still linger in startlingly large amounts across the border in neighboring Belarus. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's nothing compared to what Fukushima Daiichi is doing. There's a lot of word on the street among ET contactees that ETs are doing their part to make sure the radiation from Fukushima is not affecting humanity. You can only imagine how global extinction-like it would be if those ETs weren't helping us. All right, enough of that. Next article. Edward Snowden debates CNN's Fareed Zakaria on encryption. Zakaria shows complete lack of technical knowledge. NSA whistleblower and privacy advocate Edward Snowden took part in his first public debate on encryption on Tuesday night, facing off against CNN's Fareed Zakaria, a journalist and author known for his coverage of international affairs. Well, does the government have the authority to tell private individuals or private groups to turn over their phones to decrypt them for the government to try to catch crooks? No, the government does not have authority to do that. Why does the government not have authority to do that? Because we, the common people, do not have the authority to, as individuals, to order or force someone else who's not under contract with us to do something like we don't have the right to harm them in any way, can't order or force someone to do something in your individual capacity, then you cannot get together as a group and do the same thing. You didn't have authority as an individual to boss someone around. You can't get together in a group and boss them around or hurt them if they're not under contract with you. So therefore, the government, by that common sense logic, does not have authority to force us to give up our liberty for security. And all those people out there who say, well, we need people to give up liberty for security because the terrorists might hurt us. Well, look, your rights cannot be taken away just because somebody might be a safety risk. Is that clear? The only time rights can be taken away is when the totality of the circumstances makes it necessary for the rights to be taken away. 100% totality. It is not compatible with might be a risk. I'm sorry, folks. Keep your rights, will ya? They're very important. And NSA surveillance is not about safety, but about tyranny. And the last article, America's largest chicken producer recalls 4.5 million pounds of meat. Classroom recall is a health hazard situation where the use of the product will cause serious adverse health consequences or death. Yes, this is Pilgrim's Pride is recalling this. Thank you, Pilgrim's Pride, for realizing you're hurting people and doing something about it. All right, enough of that. I see I have two people in the queue here. One person, 267. That's my area code. I wonder if that could be. They definitely want to talk, but let me see if 302 is Mike Nardo. Area code 302, is this Mike Nardo?
Yes, it is. How are you?
Oh, okay, yes. Glad to have you on the air. Glad you were able to send that email about an hour ago, making it clear that you were on, because, like I said, I was a little concerned about that because you didn't respond. But, hey, it's all well and good now. Let's not worry about that. Let's have the audience get to know you a little better. I guess you could tell us about this full-service IT consulting firm if you want, just for the hell of it. And then all the people who see how there's no correlation between someone who founds that kind of a business and writes a fictional story about real-life metaphysical and spiritual and extraterrestrial fact. I mean, how could someone who runs that business have that kind of a hobby? Some might say it seems kind of out of place. But and by all means, after you do that, introduce yourself, tell a little bit of your life story, and then after that, you got the floor. Give us a whole Cliff's Notes summary of your book, The Beginning.
Okay. First of all, Andrew, thank you for having me on. And I do apologize if I didn't return your email earlier, but it was kind of a crazy day. In this business, running an IT company gets hectic some days. I have a computer company that I started 20 years ago. I spent 21 years in the Attorney General's office for the state of Delaware as the Director of Administration and Operations. After I graduated from the University of Delaware, I spent, as I said, 21 years there. Started this business with practically nothing. I had 3 daughters, 2 of which were getting ready to go to college, and I decided that it was time for a change, and I had some real experience in IT, and I was able to utilize that to start the business. And 20 years later, I'm still in business. I got 35 to 40 employees, and over the years, we've received a lot of recognition for being best in business, best place, best workplace. I'm very proud of the company, and it's been very good to me. As far as how this connects to the book, there is no connection. Ever since I was in college, I had an interest in this subject for a lot of reasons. Just like most people in this area, I read Van Doniken's book and found that to be pretty interesting. And over the years, I followed different stories on this subject matter and collected information and feel that it's very interesting. So there is no connection other than just being a hobby. Hello?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to be on mute whenever you're talking, just so you know. So if there's a 2-second delay, that's because I'm unmuting. And believe me, these Blog Talk buttons can take up to maybe 15 seconds to unmute. So I'll be here, but it might take a little while sometimes if there's a glitch. But your book, I didn't go over the summary, even though I have a summary here in the bio, because I wanted to give you the chance to talk all about that and maybe also elaborate on how it is truth under the guise of fiction in some regards, spirituality-wise, metaphysical-wise, and extraterrestrial-wise, and political-wise too, because the government and the military is involved in this book I wrote. So feel free to give us a chapter-by-chapter Cliff's Notes summary of your book. You got the floor.
Okay. The beginning is a science fiction thriller that explores the existence of alien life in the universe and its connection to the Earth and the origin of man. It tells the story of how a top-secret quasi-government committee consisting of members of the powerful corporations, intelligence agencies, scientists, and the President of the United States are involved in numerous cover-ups and close encounters throughout history. The book seeks answers to the questions, are we alone in the universe? What is the origin of man? How did all this begin? The beginning provides another viewpoint on the mystery of human life, the existence of extraterrestrials, and their connection to the Earth. And one of the primary purposes of this book is to broaden our perspective on the origin and history of the human race on Earth. One of the problems, the perceptions, and believe it or not, it seems to be negative, especially from the scientific community, regarding the subject. They seem to, anybody that tries to talk about ancient astronauts or talks about ufology, they seem to not accept a lot of their beliefs. But the bottom line is, when you look out into the universe and you see, billions and billions and billions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy alone, with at least 3 planets rotating around each planet, and then billions of galaxies on top of that. I mean, really, what is the probability of that there is some alien life or other life in the universe? That, to me, that probability is very high, and it says to me that there is a possibility. Then the issue is, did any intelligent life ever come and visit Earth? And if you look at a lot of the research, you had a lot of scientists who, over the years has provided information that, quite frankly, is to a large degree believable, that there are evidence of things that have been left behind in history, and whether it's scriptures or artifacts or whatever it may be, tablets that seem to support that concept. So the book talks about that, and it's centered around. Basically, it starts with a group of Navy SEALs who were brought in to Sumer, Iraq, as in response to what was a close encounter where it was picked up by the intelligence community. They were sent in there to find out what was going on, and during that investigation, they ran into a terrorist group, and battles within a cave that they were sent in to look for had occurred. And at that point, it goes on with, different battle scenes and things of that nature. But the whole concept was that, you had different people talking about this subject throughout the book, kind of articulating what their positions were. And there some were for this, the existence of extraterrestrials and the fact that they did visit Earth. And there was those that presented it throughout the book, an opposite opinion. So there's some of that going on, and it's interesting that throughout this book that there are different opinions on that, and the book tries to bring them out.
Thank you very much. And mentioning that Sumer is mentioned in the book, and the word Tiamat mentioned, that's said to be another planet. I just wanted to get your general take on what you think about. Well, before I get your opinion, there's a couple of things I need to tell you regarding the work of Zecharia Sitchin, because that's one author in the ancient astronaut field that many people associate with Sumer and such. And it should be noted that Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis, I've told this many times on my show, but I got to tell it again because it fits for this episode, pointed out in a series of interviews he did with Lance White back in 2013 that Zecharia Sitchin's first 3 books are extremely accurate, although his timelines are off in terms of the years. He got that wrong, and the Anunnaki did not come to Earth, though, to get gold for their shield, their planet Nibiru. There was another reason why they got the gold. Bartzis gets into that. And a lot of people would find that to be, well, first of all, they find it to be mind-boggling because, one, it implies the planet Nibiru does exist in a 3,600-year elliptical orbit in our solar system, and the Anunnaki come from that, and they genetically engineered humans by combining Homo erectus DNA with Anunnaki DNA. I think that would have been about 300,000 years ago. Even they first came to Earth 450,000 plus years ago. Sitchin talks about, and a lot of people, other people would say, well, this makes no sense because there's been a lot of evidence that Zecharia Sitchin was a deliberate fraud. Like Leo Zagami, former 33rd degree Freemason, in his Project Camelot interview, turned whistleblower. He became whistleblower, and he said that Sitchin was a Illuminati disinfo agent who got assistance from the Vatican. And anybody who's ever seen David Icke's Revelations of a Mother Goddess documentary in 1998 might remember that scene where Arizona Wilder said that she saw Zecharia Sitchin at satanic ceremonies and that she said he was actually a shape-shifting reptilian alien. And David Icke said, oh, well, that might explain why Sitchin warned me not to talk about the reptilians in my work. And when I addressed that with Andrew Bartzis and said, so how could Sitchin have been accurate if he was a reptilian disinformer? When I met Bartzis in Florida at a conference, Bartzis told me, no, those people that said Sitchin was a fraud, they were undergoing a complex form of timeline manipulation, mind control, where they were misperceiving an event of some sort. So that's why they believe Sitchin was a fraud, but in fact he wasn't. And I'm sorry the world has to be this complicated, but like it or not, this is how reality works, and I think I need to point it out on my show, and I should definitely have elaborated on that whole thing because your book touches on Sumer and Tiamat. A lot of people would have recollections of Zecharia Sitchin's work, I'm sure, if they read your book. So with that being said, do you have any comments about this whole thing about Sitchin being accurate and forces trying to discredit him?
Well, first of all, you got to give some credit to Zacharias for, being one of the few people who actually can interpret, Sumerian text. That civilization just, it just seems like they vanished from the face of the earth. And there's some discussion that at some point they had migrated out of the Middle East into, actually Hungary. And there are some people believe that the dialect of the Hungarian language is very similar, or the closest thing they have to the Sumerian language. So Zacharias Sitchin has actually studied this for many years. He's interpreted a lot of the artifacts. He's interpreted tablets, and the guy has some credibility in that regard. Now, the matter of what was said, it's a matter of interpretation. That's his interpretation. Other people believe that the tablets and the artifacts are saying something completely different. But he believes that the Anunnaki was a race that came from another planet and had settled in this area, and they left a lot of evidence that to prove that, and that's what his theory is based on, interpreting those items. As far as him being a fraud, I don't think he's a fraud. I mean, whether he interpreted the tablets correctly or not is another issue, but I don't think the man was a fraud.
I don't think he was a fraud either. People say I use Andrew Bartzis as a source too much, and I say, hey, if he says that the Akashic Records say it, if the Akashic Records say Sitchin's first 3 books are accurate, well, then it must be true, and I might as well point it out. But one thing a lot of people say about Sitchin's work that say he can't possibly be right is the idea that the Anunnaki or any extraterrestrial race could possibly survive on Nibiru because most of its orbit is far out beyond the orbit of Neptune. And, people have tried to debunk this, among others. In my interview with John Lear, he talked about how the universe, first of all, the idea that gravity powers is like the ultimate power in the universe and regarding orbiting planets and such. It's a lie. We are really in an electric universe. Among other things, the stars are not powered by nuclear fusion. They're actually electromagnetic, and they're more electric than magnetic because, well, those in the metaphysics community say electricity is male energy, magnetism is the female energy counterpart, stars are male energy, well, our sun is anyway. Therefore, it's got to have more electricity than magnetism. Some might say it has no magnetism, but I think probably wouldn't be the case. But this idea that we're in an electric universe, John Lear asserts the stars don't radiate heat. They actually transmit the energy on a universal web of electromagnetic energy that we can't see because it's outside visible light, and the planets convert that into some sort of a system, through a filtering system that allows for life to exist on the planet. Now, that could explain how life can exist on Nibiru, but in my interview with Andromeda Council contactee Tolek, he actually gave a more concise explanation for how life exists on Nibiru, and that is that Nibiru, it has its own internal internal power system that's completely different than almost many other planets like Earth. In fact, Andrew Bartza said Nibiru runs on a dimensional drive, Earth a unity consciousness drive. Big difference there, and also Nibiru has a outside part of its atmosphere that allows for it to survive the vast reaches of space. So Tolek gets into that in greater detail in my interview with him if anybody wants to check that out. But this idea that life is very, very common in the universe, and much more common than all those people that say you got to be in the Goldilocks zone of a solar system to have life. Well, no, bullcrap, because we live in an electric universe, stars have their filtering systems, and just like Nibiru, not all planets function the same way in regards to their energy sources and such. So you got any comments on all this radical stuff that mainstream science won't talk about?
Well, first of all, Sitchin said that Nibiru was a planet that had a rotation of 3,600 years, and that it came circle into our solar system, during that period of time, and that now we're finding out that the rotation, as Sitchin said, was all the way out to the edges of the universe or of the solar system, and at that point, he had indicated that that's where the Anunnaki came from. Well, now they're saying that there is a planet they call Planet X, and they're finding out more and more that they believe there are planets that rotate similar to Nibiru, and that that such planets do exist. So who's to tell whether he was right or wrong? But there is evidence to the fact that there are planets further out in our solar system that do rotate in that way. So I think it's an interesting concept, and I don't think he was too far off. The other thing, you look at history and you look at people, like Bruno and Galileo and folks like that who came up with theories that, were, controversial. At the time, history of the 1500s and 1600s, most people believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. Well, these individuals, these scientists, came along and said that the Earth wasn't, that there was a sun, and even Bruno went on to say that he thought that there was life on other planets, the possibility of that. And unfortunately for Bruno, he ended up getting burned in the stake in Rome, and was tried and then burned at the stake, as well as Galileo. He also was tried for his beliefs, and basically they were tried by the church, who had reasons to believe that the Earth was the center of the universe because of their religious beliefs. It was a lot more controllable to believe that a God, was more controllable if the Earth was the center of the universe, rather than the sun being it and the Earth rotating around the sun.
Yes, and since you mentioned that, I just can't resist asking you about this whole distraction that's going on right now with the idea that Earth is actually the center because the Earth is flat. I had Santos Bonacci on my show recently, and the climax of that episode was when I debated him over the idea that the Earth is flat versus the Earth is round. He actually asserts that Copernicus worked for the powers that be, and his assertion that the Earth orbits the sun was a diversion to divert us from the fact that he claims the Earth is flat. Well, no, it turns out that, why do people believe the Earth is flat? Well, George Kavasilis, in a recent interview I watched on OpThink Radio, that's about 3 hours long, one of his more recent interviews, he talked about how the reason the flat Earth theory seems to make sense, even though it's not true, is because everything that people use to try to prove that the Earth is flat is based on two-dimensional logic. And anybody who is stuck in a left-brain mentality will instantly see that and think, oh, this proves the Earth is flat. when in reality, if you were to become not so logic-based, not so two-dimensional, and not so left-brained, you would be able to use other things that are not just logic, but also beyond logic, that can be used to prove that the Earth is round. And he said, well, I know the Earth is not flat because I had like an out-of-body experience of sorts with my space brothers, and I went up there and I saw the Earth from space, that it is round. So this idea that the Earth is flat, and the idea that people might think that it's that the flat Earth theory is true because logic and two-dimensional left-brain thinking can show that it's true. Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let's face it, the Earth isn't flat. So, I mean, we know that. I think the real issue here, what I'm trying to point out with Bruno and Galileo, is that, you know, throughout history, you've had people who have presented new concepts, new ideas about things that were against what the traditional beliefs were. And, all I'm saying is that people need to keep an open mind when people talk about the ancient astronaut theory and, UFOs and all those kinds of things. I just think that, the existence of life outside, the planet Earth is a real possibility. And the probability is extremely high because just the sheer numbers of stars, of galaxies. I mean, we think we're the only intelligent life in the universe. Well, I just can't believe that given the numbers that are out there. And I think that in itself, is enough to, have this discussed more than it is. I think to a large degree, the traditional mainstream scientists believe that, they don't take this serious for a lot of reasons. And I think it should be taken serious, and I think it should be debated more, only because, some of the things that happened in the past. In addition, 55% of all Americans, 75% of young adults from 18 to 24 believe that there is intelligent life on other planets. A National Geographic survey indicated that 77% of Americans believes that there are signs that aliens have visited Earth. I mean, there are a lot of people in this country that believe that this exists, but there are also a lot of scientists who have more credibility who, don't even want to discuss it over the years, and they frown upon it. Now you're starting to see changes. If you look at, more recently, some of the research that's been done, for example, you take people like, Kepler and, those individuals over the years have produced evidence to the fact that, that this theory is real. Secondly, just the fact that some of the scientists are now beginning to believe that there is alien life out there has come to fold in more recent studies, and it's beginning to take shape. However, you still have those folks who frown upon it and say that there's a negative connotation when you talk about aliens. So there we have it. I just think we need to debate it more. It needs to come out. There's a lot of people that credible people that have either seen UFOs or have had experiences, and it just seems like they're discredited, and people don't quite frankly want to talk about it.
There's no question about that, and I got to ask you, since you run the business, that you run the full-service IT consulting firm, I couldn't possibly imagine how, if any of the people that your employees were to actually talk about when it was okay to talk about it, not like with customers and all that, but like maybe in like doing their job, like not interacting with anybody, so maybe discussing the idea of ETs and UFOs. Now, a lot of people would say, I can't talk about that stuff while I'm at my job because my boss would fire me. Well, I can't imagine you would fire them, because if you did, it would kind of be egg in your face, because a lot of people know that you talk about this stuff, so it would make no sense for you to fire employees for talking about stuff like that. But for all those people out there who say, I don't want to lose my reputation, I want to make a lot of money, I'm not willing to sacrifice my money and my reputation to talk about this stuff, even though I have a lot of knowledge in it, because I'll lose my job and all the other things that go with it. Do you think those people have a good point, or do you think it's time for people to make sacrifices, stop caring about your reputation, stop worrying about how much money you make sacrifices to get this truth out? What's your take on that?
Well, I wrote the book with the idea of trying to educate people. I tried to gather as much evidence as I can. I did do a lot of research, and I think that the book has some credibility. I mean, is it right? I think time will tell. I just think that the people should be prepared if it does happen. I could imagine if something like this, like someone was to come to Earth, it would be a shock to many of our institutions. I really wonder if we're prepared for it. There is that possibility that could happen. More and more scientists are becoming, convinced. You got, Hawkins, who in the past was against any kind of research that sent out signals. Over the years we had different things to, welcoming and other races we sent out, whether they be spaceships or signals or whatever, inviting people, letting them know that we're here. And Hawkins was one who said, this was reckless, because you don't want to broadcast the fact that we're here, because who knows what's going to happen. It could, he compared it to when Columbus discovered America, that eventually resulted in the demise of the Native Americans. And he kind of believed that same thing would happen. But more recently, with the breakthrough initiatives and the Breakthrough Listen project, sponsored by billionaire Milner from Russia, Hawkins joined that along with Lord Rees, the search for life beyond Earth. Basically, astronomers are embarked on an intensive search for alien life by listening out for potential radio signals coming from advanced civilization. I mean, this is real. This occurred in January of 2016 was the send-off for this project, and they bought a lot of different telescope time in order to, continue that kind of search. SETI did it for years, and I believe this search is a little bit different in that it's more targeted to habitable zones where they believe that there is life, and they're trying to target it instead of just sending out these signals. But, over time, you're seeing more and more people wanting to get answers. And, again, I think it just boils back to the probability. We're the only life in the universe. I mean, this is huge. There's billions and billions and billions and billions of planets, and telling me that we're the only place with life, I find that hard to believe.
It is also ridiculous. And, it's also kind of ridiculous. You mentioned Stephen Hawking. He is like, his left brain mentality is so ridiculous. Mark Passio said in a presentation I saw him do that Stephen Hawking is like the poster boy for left brain logic. He has a lot of intellect, but he doesn't have a shred of intelligence, and intelligence is intellect plus creativity. And I've seen some of those shows on the Science Channel back in the day where Hawking was like the narrator, and there was a lot of left brain stuff I noticed with him. Interesting thing I think I point out just for the hell of it, Carrie Cassidy of Project Camelot claims that she knows someone who has presented evidence that the original Stephen Hawking is actually dead, and the one that we see today is a clone. I suppose that's certainly possible, because Fritz Springmeier interview with him told a there's a lot of clones out there. It's not something you can easily prove, so a lot of people don't talk about it. But hey, just for the hell of it, I'd point that out. But since you mentioned there's got to be life everywhere, with the idea that life isn't just on other planets, but in other dimensions or densities or realms, whatever word you want to use, and string theory, which says that there are 11 dimensions, and those on metaphysics and consciousness communities, they say there's 12 dimensions. A lot of people say there's 22. They see in the 12-dimensional construct, like there's a part that's 10 dimensions in one. George Kavaslis talked about that in my private session with him. But science cannot disprove the idea that intelligent life exists in these other dimensions, densities, realms, or whatever you want to call them. So do you think it's worth researching in greater detail life in these alternate parallel worlds?
Well, again, I got to be honest with you. I don't know that much about that, other than I would say that the only thing that comes to mind regarding my subject area would be, the various the dimensions. I mean, they talk about space folding, talk about black holes. They talk about wormholes and the ability to be able to use those to cut the travel time from one place to the other. You've had scientists say that the space folds. You take one end of it and you flip it over, and it folds, and it becomes parallel. I think the physics of that is still premature. We're still in the early stages of it, but I think as time goes on, we're beginning to find out. And they call it dimensions. There are different dimensions through time and space, and I think there is some credibility to that. But again, it's still in the early stages of research, and there's nothing that we haven't had anybody been able to travel, except within the speeds that we have. And a lot of people say, your theory is all dried up because it's all wet because we haven't physically seen anybody. The distances between the planets that there would be possible life is just too far for people to travel from one place to the other. Well, that's our understanding, of it, of time and space. I'm sure that it's a lot more sophisticated than the way we believe. I mean, if someone was to tell somebody, hundreds of years ago that you could fly a jet from Philadelphia to California in 3 hours, people would think they're crazy. But we've been able to accomplish that. People, talk about, 200 years ago about going to the moon and landing people on the moon. I mean, nobody conceived that as a possibility through science to be able to do that. So, I think there's a lot that we have to learn yet. And I think that until we learn that, I just think that everybody needs to keep an open mind. And basically that's what the book is trying to do, is try to get people to think of and keep an open mind about this subject, because, all throughout history, you look, in the scriptures, paintings, and things of that nature, there are indications that, it looks spiritual because, people have related it to gods and religion and things of that nature. But it can be interpreted other ways. And that's one of the themes of the book, is the actual interpretation of things. Everybody has a reason to interpret things, for their own, for their own cause. So, all I'm trying to do is get people to think about this as a possibility, and just don't say, this is, aliens. This is all fantasy. It's not true. It's mythical, and it's not based on any true facts. So that's kind of, where I'm at with it, and I'm hoping that the book will get people to think a little bit out of the box and try to study the subject.
Thank you. And with the some of the joke organizations that we have, it's kind of hard for people to study the subject. 2 organizations I want to talk about. You mentioned one earlier, and then there's another infamous one. SETI. Stanton Friedman says SETI should stand for Silly Effort to Investigate. I mean, to think that you could actually put catch radio signals from when the distances from star to star are so vast in this lifetime. It's kind of ridiculous. And NASA, many say it should stand for never a straight answer. I prefer not always a straight answer, because every so often NASA rarely tells the truth. So give them a little credit and say it's not always a straight answer. But the idea that a lot of the pictures that they've given us are total forgeries. I mean, John Lear went as far as saying the sky on the moon is actually a saffron yellow color. The moon has an hemisphere, and I believe he said the late Edgar Mitchell, who many assert is the only astronaut who was not under mind control, talked about that. So that means that a lot of astronauts, former astronauts, and NASA employees have a lot of explaining to do regarding the NASA moon landings. But like I said, a lot of astronauts are under mind control, so they probably wouldn't be able to help you. But the idea that SETI is a joke, and the idea that also Seth Shostak, he's actually a little bit of a hatchet man for the people trying to cover things up by downplaying the idea that life is everywhere because SETI hasn't located it. He knows that SETI is a joke, but he's just going along to get along and playing along with the plot. Seth Shostak is, some would assert, and NASA lying to us. So SETI and NASA, your opinions. You got the floor.
Well, first of all, I think NASA is a government agency funded by taxpayers, and they're going to do what they need to do in order to keep their existence. So I think over the years there's things that they ran into that they've covered up, and they have not told the American people about different things. And I think astronauts, you mentioned Edgar Mitchell. I mean, there are others out there that have come forward that said that they've seen things that they can't explain, and basically were told not to say anything. So I think that NASA has a true mission. I think they've contributed a lot to science, and I think that should continue. And it appears now with the Kepler and Hubble and all that, they're moving in a direction to search for intelligent life, and I think that's an important mission for not only America but for mankind. SETI, I have my problems with SETI. I think the technology is old, but it's the technologies that they knew. You go back to Frank Drake, and he was one of the founders of SETI. That's what they had. They tried. They had a goal. The goal was to find other life in other planets, and that's the technology they can use. Now people are saying that's old technology. Maybe we should use more laser-driven technology to do the same thing. Well, the problem is, with SETI is you don't even know if these people know about radio waves. I mean, it's an old concept. So if these are people that are very intelligent and way ahead of us, I mean, they wouldn't be using that kind of technology. So that's the problem with SETI. And I think there's going to be changes. I think they're moving in another direction. And with this, the Russian internet billionaire helping out, I think that they may be able to find better ways to do it. But I agree the technology they use is not the best for this kind of thing.
Yes, and speaking of technology, you mentioned technology that can be used to circumvent the speed of light problem. I had John Lear on my show, like I mentioned, and one of the things we talked about was Bob Lazar, and is he accurate? Is he a fraud? Is he telling the truth? Like Stan Friedman is one of those prominent people who say Bob Lazar is not telling the truth. He said Bob Lazar couldn't have gone to MIT, among other things, because he wasn't in like the top third of his class. So, I mean, maybe with Sir Bob Lazar, he was just lying about his credentials to make him seem like a fascinating individual more. And a lot of people do that, but sadly, many people would assert that means Bob Lazar is a fraud and everything else. But when I had John Lear on, a couple things he did. First of all, he said that the isotopes of element 115 that Bob Lazar talks about are used to bend space-time towards the craft. The way it works is, for those that don't know, element 115 has 115 protons, and you bombard it with small microscopic particles to make it element 116. With one more proton, element 116 is extremely unstable, so it instantly breaks down into 115, and then decays into 115, and then that's when the craft uses that to bend space-time towards the craft and John said that it can be used to get from here to Zeta Reticuli, which is about 39 light years from Earth, in about 34 hours using that technology. And the Zeta Reticuli grays are said to be the ones that used element 115, and Bob Lazar said that the element 115 that they use comes from a solar system much, much larger than ours, and the fact that the solar system is much larger allows for the atoms and molecules within that solar system to last longer. Like in this solar system, they would decay instantly. Like Stan Freeman said, element 115 would decay in a heartbeat. The ETs can't do anything with it. But no, if it's in a bigger solar system, the atoms, which are basically microsolar systems, can survive much longer. And, well, that's what John Lira said. He didn't seem like he was making anything up when he said that. Sounded honest and sincere. And then there's all the other technologies of like circumventing the fact that space and time are illusions to teleport yourself. And also, of course, as you go closer and closer to the speed of light, you travel into the future at a faster rate. Time slows down for you. So circumventing the speed of light, using technology to get around the universe, what are all the technologies that you think of when you think of that phenomenon? And which technologies do you think the human race would be the closest to?
Well, it's a good question. I'm not a physics expert. It's way above my pay grade. So I have really not a whole lot to say about the subject other than the fact that I think that we're kind of like, you know, I don't like to use this description, but kind of like in a stone age when it comes to this area of space travel and what we're trying to do. I just think there's so much more technology out there and science out there that we have no idea about yet. And eventually, you know, we will get to that point, but we're nowhere near it right now. And to discuss it is just really another form of science fiction. I just know that, you know, given, you know, mankind's development over the years and where we started, you know, from walking to horses to buggies, all the way through to automobiles to airplanes to jets, and you know, we keep improving technology. Spaceships go off. I mean, we're sending spaceships now that are going out of this solar system into other areas. You have Kepler. You have, you know, the Hubble, you know, spaceship. You have so many, or telescope. You have so many different technologies that have been developed, and we continue to develop. That you know, to say exactly what kind of transport we're going to use at this point, I have no idea. I just know one thing: we're not even close being to where we should be, and someday we will. But it's going to take a lot of time, and I don't think I'll ever see it in my lifetime. That's for sure.
Well, some have talked about possible UFO exposure, and but at least what I mean, well, a lot of UFO technology has been exposed. It's just that as long as the government and or mainstream media don't acknowledge it, the many people in the general public will refuse to acknowledge that there is such a cover-up, no matter how many conspiracy theorists or researchers with a lot of free time on their hands come forward to say, here's the evidence for it. So that's just show you how lost in a trance many humans are. It's a shame. But enough of that. Switching gears, mentioning the Mound of Tiamat in your book. Now, Tiamat, what is Tiamat? There's been different schools of thought on this, and a lot of people have confused the issue by like using the name Nibiru to refer to different bodies, and also like the name Tiamat to refer to different bodies. Like Zecharia Sitchin in his books, in the 12th Planet, among other books, talked about how Tiamat used to be the Earth, and one of Nibiru's moons on a close orbit collided with Tiamat and fractured it in half, and half became the Earth we know, and the other half became the asteroid belt. Now, others say, well, Sitchin, that was one thing he was wrong about. There was another story behind the asteroid belt. Like Michael Tsarian, for example, says that the asteroid belt didn't form out of half a planet. It formed out of a whole planet, a planet called, he said it was called Maldek, I believe. Like Marduk is what the I think the Sumerians called Nibiru, the Babylonians called Nibiru. That's where the name Nibiru came from. The Babylonians called it that, not the Sumerians. And Maldek, some have confused that with Malduk, but Tsarian says no. Maldek was the planet. in the inner solar system that was destroyed became the asteroid belt, and that confuses the issue in many regards because there's a lot of different stories being thrown out there in regards to by different sources and different people in regards to what kind of a cataclysm happened in the ancient past. Because many say it was some sort of a solar system cataclysm in the not too distant past, like 6,000, maybe 13,000 years ago. But some say it was a supernova. Some say it was like Jupiter moving closer and to the inner solar system, and Saturn used to be closer to Earth. Now, I could go on and on about this, but I babbled long enough already. Tiamat, when you think of Tiamat, what kind of version, what story do you think of with Tiamat? Which researchers got it right in regards to what that should actually refer to?
Well, there's a lot of different definitions of what Tiamat is. I mean, some people believe it's just mythology of stories that powerful people. There was fights in Tiamat, and all these different characters fought, and basically there are other people that believe that it was a collision, like you said, that Tiamat once collided with Earth, and from that the remains are some of it's the asteroid belt, some is our moon, and whatever was left is now Earth, and they believe that the planet, the two planets collided, and that planet was called Tiamat. So there's just so many different stories on Tiamat, and has to do a lot with mythology, and Zacharias Hitchens gets involved in some of it, and a lot of other people have researched it and studied and wrote about it, but it can mean a lot of things. And this, for instance, I used it as the Mound of Tiamat as mythology, that this was an ancient place. It was where the book centers around. There's caves in the Mound of Tiamat that people that are involved in the book eventually centered to, and found a lot of artifacts in there. It's known in Sumer as a very mystical place, a lot of history, and the book begins with two shepherds in June of 2012 who are basically herding their sheep and get bored and go off to the Mound of Tiamat, where their parents have told them for years, do not go to. It's a place, it's a forbidden place. No one's allowed there. So the kids, being kids, they were bored and they decided to go there. And what happened was there was a close encounter, and that encounter was picked up by an intelligence agency who had experienced collected some information that had them zero in on that, and eventually they sent this group of Navy SEALs there to investigate it. And once they did, one thing leads to the other. There's battles between terrorists and them inside the cave. They discover these, various, artifacts, including tablets, and the tablets are telling a story, and that's how the book gets started. And throughout the book, you're able to get more and more information about, what the Anunnaki left as far as, the history they left mankind.
Thank you. And I'd like to talk about, actually, before I talk about what's on the cover of your book, one quick thing about the number of planets in the solar system. You mentioned there's obviously more than we're being told. And, John Lear, in my interview with him, said there's 40 planets. Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartza says, no, in our solar system is actually 66 planets. Now, it goes without saying mainstream science can't really seem to agree on a universal definition for planet, because every time they try to change the definition, they always seem to have to include something that many people don't think of as a planet. So I guess the answer to the number of how many planets there actually are in our solar system, it depends on one's personal definition of planet. But I did mention just a couple minutes ago about how, like, people have used the name Nibiru to both refer to the planet that Zecharia Sitchin talks about as the home of the Anunnaki, and some have also referred to the name Nibiru to refer to, it's been said that there is like a brown dwarf-like star moving through our solar system at this very moment. And I think Alex Collier talked about how like late April, early May, the time period we're in right now, is when Nibiru will actually be at its closest point. And a lot of people have said they have, with powerful telescopes, been able to make it out like in like just above the atmosphere. And it's very interesting that I've noticed a lot of chemtrails have been sprayed around sunset in my area. It's almost as if they're trying to conceal the fact that maybe there's a planet or like large object in the on the horizon. Perhaps that's just a theory I have. But have you like this whole debate about how many planets there are, and have you heard anything about this Planet X object that's moving through our solar system right now? Any comments?
The only thing I know is that they've found a planet that they call Planet X, okay, that's on the outer part of our solar system that they believe does have a rotation that's, maybe a 3,600-year rotation, similar to what Zecharia Sitchin has been, says in his book. There are apparently some efforts to get some of the explorers that we have, the spaceships that are out there that are doing their research and collecting data and stuff like that to get closer to them to determine exactly what they are. But that's all I know. I don't know any of it coming close to the Earth. I just don't know enough about it other than to say that there has been some bodies out there that they've been able to ascertain. As far as the number of planets, it is what it is. I mean, we have a number of planets in our solar system that's been well documented. As far as being 66 of them, again, I think it's just like you said, it depends on how you define them. I mean, you got moons. Somebody could say that, all the moons around Saturn and they're planets, but that's not how we define them. So I think if you look further beyond our solar system, stars, other galaxies, there's got to be trillion and trillion of planets out there. And then the issue is, as far as life as we define it, does the planets have water? A lot of people say, follow the water and you're going to find life. Any planet with water has the potential for that. There's been research in 2015 that's indicated that Mars now, they're pretty sure, had oceans and had water. In fact, they still believe, based on information that they gathered this past year, that there's water on Mars. It just seems that one time that planet did have water, but either it got thrown off its axis or whatever happened to it. It no longer has it visible, but they believe it's under the ground. So I guess a couple things. Number one, the number of planets in our solar system is what it is. It's what we defined it as being. And, we basically said these are the numbers. People can go ahead and define it differently, but I think we have to have some criteria for determining what they are, and I think it's right what they're saying.
Thanks. And getting to the subject, I wanted to get to what's like depicted on the cover of your book, The Beginning. I'm looking at it here on the Amazon website. I'll take this bit by bit. First thing I noticed throughout the center of the book cover is a strand of DNA, although the DNA is not blue and red as many people would color DNA. It's all entirely blue, and it seems to be paralleling or close to paralleling the arm of the Milky Way galaxy that people could see on a starry night with no lights on the ground anywhere. So DNA, a lot of our DNA, it's been suppressed. We have many more. We have 64 codons actually, and only like 12 are active or something to that effect. I could be wrong on the numbers there. But what do you see as the significance behind DNA that made you put it on the cover of your book, and what's the significance behind it paralleling the Milky Way, if that was designed on purpose?
Well, the Milky Way, it's just basically it simplifies the universe, okay, and the book, is a science fiction book, and what it says is some of the things that some of the scientists have said. The less traditional scientists, that Earth was visited by extraterrestrials who manipulated the DNA, and that's how we have mankind today. And that basically is one of the things that are discussed in the book, and that's why it has that cover the way it is. So Zacharias Sitchin, he said that the Anunnaki had, manipulated the DNA of man, and his belief and others that believe in the ancient astronaut theory believe that, the Sumerians, for example, I mean, how did they get so much knowledge so fast? They look at the civilization. Sumer is the cradle of civilization. That was the first. The Sumerians were the first to have, books. Were the first to have a language. Were the first to have medicine. I mean, a political structure. It's pretty sophisticated, and this was 6,000 years ago. And most people, say that given the time, that was impossible for that to happen. How did that happen? So a lot of these people like Zacharias Sitchin and others believe that somebody intervened, and that people that intervened were, in this case, the Anunnaki, and that's how man was able to develop faster than he was on, and that civilization grew the way it did and become mature the way it did, and that we got help from somebody else.
Thank you. And another noticeable thing on your cover here is extraterrestrial hand, finger on the hand, making contact with a human hand. Now, two schools of thought here. Is this meant to symbolize something out of the popular movie E.T. from the 1980s, or is this meant to symbolize like that popular painting that was made of man touching the finger of God coming from the clouds? So for the people that are confused as to what this is actually supposed to, or is it meant to symbolize both, perhaps? Tell us about the symbolism behind that.
No, I don't think that has anything to do with E.T. as far as the concept of E.T. and the movie of E.T. What it is that it's just back to what I said, that there are some folks that believe that an extraterrestrial had influence on mankind and the history of mankind and the civilization, our civilization. And the touching means that they, it's a symbol of them helping, mankind to move forward and to become civilized and have culture and things of that nature. And that's pretty much what it symbolizes.
Thanks. And the last thing on your book here, it's mentioning shows a picture of something that's not from Sumer, but from Egypt, or maybe I'm mistaken. One would look at that and see, oh, well, that's the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau. Of course, pyramids, they're obviously very powerful objects. Put a pyramid under you when you sleep, or put it, like in my case, in front of you when you're at your computer. You'll feel the energies from it, and lots of schools of thought on what the Great Pyramid was used for. Like George Cavazos said, that it was used to anchor, the three pyramids to anchor the male energy, because they represent the belt of Orion, which is a male energy dominant area of the sky. Anchor the male energy to Earth. The four corners of the pyramid represent fire, air, earth, and water. And he said that he remembers in his past life, George, was laying in that sarcophagus object in the king's chamber, which isn't a sarcophagus, but you do lay in that. You feel the energies of earth, air, water, and fire, and then the energies will emanate from the capstone in the pyramid. And of course, there's also Christopher Dunn's idea that you pour hydrodized zinc down one shaft, and you pour a hydrochloric acid solution down the other shaft, and then they combine in the king's chamber to turn the pyramid into a power plant when they like hydrogen is formed from that reaction. And Carmen Bolter, who I interviewed on my show, who made the documentary The Pyramid Code, talked about how the pyramids were like shining beacons, different colors for each pyramid, and under the pyramid, the water would come in, and it would come up in the pyramid and allow for energy to intermingle in some way to form she talks about it in my interview if you want to check it out. But this, like, why you decided to put the pyramids on there when that's a symbol of Egypt, when your book makes reference to Sumer and what you think maybe the pyramids may have been used for in the past. Any comments?
Yeah, well, I think just being simply this. I mean, Eric Van Daniken, spent 3 or 4 books the course of the last 30 years writing about artifacts, the pyramids, and how could mankind create them? How do they have the technology to move all those the blocks that it took, the huge tons and tons of material it took to move from one place to the other and then build these pyramids. That Van Daniken and other ancient astronauts said that they that civilization had help from someone higher up, and that's basically what the symbol is there. The book talks about Zachariah Hitchens, Van Daniken, and a few other these so-called ancient astronaut theorists, and the book goes on to debate some of the reality of what they're saying may be true. They talk about stuff that was mentioned in scriptures, that people misinterpreted as, being something spiritual, godlike, and it could have meant other things. You look at some of the art that we have, it's interesting, and the way that art was interpreted and used by religion is interesting also. But some of these ancient astronauts believed that man was depicting exactly what they saw, and not necessarily was it, like godlike. It was, possibly extraterrestrials, but we misinterpreted it and used it. Religion used it for its own purpose.
Yeah, there's a little debate going on there about whether or not a lot of the paintings and depictions that we see from our ancestors, they were depicting that because they saw that, or were they perhaps depicting that because that was part of their religion and they thought that that was true even though it wasn't, because like I mentioned at the beginning of my show during the news segment, a lot of people subscribe to the idea that religions were created as a form of brainwashing to suppress people's consciousness, among other things. And if that's the case, then that raises the whole question of a lot of these depictions and such, are they religions that people believe because they were brainwashed into believing it, or did the ancients depict what they saw? Do you maybe have any suggestions on how to determine which is which, or is it really just using your own discernment and just guessing in the end?
Well, I think you have to use your own, judgment on what you think it represents. And again, one of the themes of the book is interpretation. Various people have different interpretation of artifacts and what they mean, paintings, what they mean. It's a matter of interpreting, basically what it is, and it's going to be based on your beliefs. The thing that is noticeable in this is that the church, the church religion, no matter what kind of religion it is, use things throughout history in order to, enhance their power. And, if you look at some of these paintings and you just look at them from a pure, what is that representation, you might not believe that it's what you've been told that it is. And, all the book is trying to say is that you need to keep an open mind to it and look at it from different perspectives and understand, what it is. You look at the books that the Dead Sea Scrolls. The book talks about that and how, all of a sudden they, these scriptures disappeared and then was found later. The Book of Enoch talks about, a lot of things that are kind of controversial, and for whatever reason was not included in any of the scriptures that we have today that are embraced by the church. It's quite interesting that those scriptures disappear, and then all of a sudden they're found in some cave, and they tell a different story. And again, I think that people, religion, wanted to control things. They had a reason for doing it, whether right or wrong, and they interpreted things that they saw the way to support what they wanted to get across to people, make people believe in. And it's not necessarily true.
Yes, and like you said, using discernment is paramount in this regard. But another thing historical as to whether there is truth to this, the idea of there being some sort of a great flood, and what caused it, because the idea is that this great flood, if it did happen, well, how many floods were there? Because Michael Nardo, I recently read his book, Atlantis, Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation. He talked about how there was a flood in the ancient past, and then there was the more recent flood of like 13,000 years ago. Now, Jordan Maxwell, when I had him on my show, he says like he thought it was ridiculous that there was an idea of a great flood on a global scale. Planet Earth is not set up for something like that. There may have been localized floods in certain areas from tsunamis and things like that, but like what could have caused this flood if those kinds of floods, if there were one? Like Zachariah Sitchin in his books talks about how a Nibiru flyby caused an ice sheet to fall off Antarctica, and it caused a massive tsunami on a global scale. And others would assert that the flood was caused by a solar system cataclysm, changed the layout of the solar system, and that as the solar system layout changed, that caused the flood on the Earth. And also Michael Nardo, getting back to him, he actually makes the radical assertion in his book, Atlantis, Alien Visitation, Genetic Manipulation, that there actually was no ice age that came to an end about 13,000 years ago. That whole the idea of an ice age is a mainstream media and mainstream history and mainstream science lie that he said was created to conceal the fact that Atlantis existed during that time period, and Atlantis existed on a global scale. Like many would assert, Atlantis had to like be in some temperate part of the world because there was an ice age. Well, no, he asserts there was no ice age. Well, that raises the conundrum of many people say that the Great Flood happened because the ice age came to an end. So a lot of people would scratch their heads over this whole idea of whether or not there was or wasn't, and whether it did or not cause this Great Flood. So the idea that there was a Great Flood, and like Sumeria, many would assert Sumeria was a civilization that was created after the flood. It wasn't the cradle because there was Atlantis and Lemuria before, but it was created after the flood. And what could have caused this flood? Any ideas on this?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Noah's Ark story, basically it boils down to God wanted to cleanse the earth of of evil, and that's why he chose Noah to take his family and all these animals on an ark and repopulate the earth once he had a flood. As far as people saying about ice age and things, that the earth is 4 billion years old, and I think most people will agree that that's pretty close. 4 billion years old. We once had dinosaurs roaming. Can you imagine this? I mean, these huge dinosaurs roaming the earth at one time, and then we have man. It's pretty incredible. Most scientists believe strongly there was some disaster that occurred, whether it was a meteor or a comet or whatever it is, hit the earth and created such a disturbance that there was probably floods and and climate change and things of that nature, and brought on ice ages. And I think now we're also starting to understand that we have climate change, and now that's raising the levels of the sea. I mean, that's a reality. Whatever you want to blame it on, it could just be a natural phenomena that occurred, that's occurring, and that we're having global warming right now, which is going to bring the waters up, above to where they are now. So I think that a lot of stuff has occurred that will never probably know. 4 billion years old this planet was here. A lot has occurred, and a little bit that we do know of recorded history, and those things that we do know beyond from doing research and science, we found out certain things, but we have no idea. We have no idea. This planet's been here 4 billion years. I'm sure it's had all kinds of different changes to it.
All right, I got to digress a little bit because you said something that forces me to just have a little bit of a debate with you as to what causes this, whether it exists or whether it doesn't. I'm not talking about both global warming and global cooling. Now, the sea levels, many assert, they're rising, but my assertion, and many would assert, that's only because as a result of meteors and such hitting the Earth and all the water that exists in the meteor rocks may cause the ocean levels to rise. But the idea that global warming and global cooling has anything to do with man-made activity is said to be ridiculous, and many would assert the powers that be, so to speak, claim that global warming is caused by man-made activity is just a scare tactic to make us give up our rights in the name of saving the Earth so they can control us. But global warming and global cooling, when they happen, like David Wilcock talked about this, it happens on a solar system scale where all the planets will warm up in the same way at the same time, and all the planets will cool down at the same time. And it has nothing to do with, obviously man-made activity or so much with what's going on in the planets as much as it has to do with the sun going through cycles, and that will cause all the planets to heat up and cool down at the same rates. So this idea that sea levels rise because of stuff from space coming into the oceans and adding water and that global warming is a man-made cause is a total farce and a hoax there. And the sun is what causes global warming, global cooling. You got any comments? I just couldn't resist bringing this to your attention and debating you about this.
First of all, I agree with you. So there's no debate. I don't think that all this was man-made. I think it's a natural phenomena that occurs, and the planet goes through different stages based on different forces, and then some of them which could be, extraterrestrial. It could be the sun, the way the sun's positioned, where the planets are positioned. There could be a lot of reasons, but the bottom line is the planet is warming. There's no question. Now, whether man has created that through pollution, is debatable, okay? But I think it's just a natural phenomena, and the Earth goes through cycles, and weather goes through cycles, and it is what it is. I think that over the course of the Earth, it's probably seen a whole bunch of different things that we're not aware of. As far as the environment is concerned, the environment is an issue, but I'm not saying that it's directly connected to global warming. But you go to places like China, there's just India, there's pollution everywhere. I mean, it can't be healthy for people. People are going around with masks on, just in places like big cities in China, because the environment has just gotten so bad. That's got to have an effect on just the human population, and it should be curtailed and dealt with. And maybe some people are using that in a way to clean some of this up, and using global warming as a scare tactic in order to make that happen. I just don't think that global warming is a direct effect of that. I just think there's so many other things involved, and if people want to use it in order to clean up the environment, okay, so be it. They want to control us. I think to a large degree, they control people already. And it seems to be a situation where, in my opinion, it's a natural phenomenon, and it's just the way it is.
Fair enough. And moving on to subject of good and bad ETs. Now, whenever I think about the subject of good and bad ETs, there's two things I normally think of. First, Georgios Tsoukalos, on an episode of Ancient Aliens, he said the idea that ETs that could cross the galaxy and the cosmos would want to enslave us and torture us and kill us and wipe us off to conquer our planet. I disagree. I'm sure any race that can travel intergalactically would be benevolent to a less civilized and less advanced race like humanity. However, in another episode, he said, just like how the explorers like Columbus and such coming to other lands did not treat the natives very nicely, they realized that they could take advantage of the natives because they were less sophisticated in terms of technology the natives were than the explorers. They decided to tell the natives, okay, you're going to listen to us or else. Well, Tsoukalos said the ETs, if they come to us and notice that, they'd be like, now you less advanced humans are going to listen to us, or else. And when I heard him say that, I was like, well, wait a minute, didn't you just say that a highly advanced ET race that can travel the galaxy would be benevolent to us? Well, he's contradicting himself, obviously, but then again, he did say in a later episode, there's good ETs and bad ETs. It's a yin-yang balance all throughout the cosmos and such. And also, Stephen Greer is another character I think about when I think about good versus bad ETs, because Stephen Greer gets all new agey, many would assert, and says all ETs are benevolent. There is no bad ETs. And if you believe the work of the late Dolores Cannon, you would say, well, he's right, because Dolores Cannon, and many others for that matter, would say fear is an illusion. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion, including fear. So if you believe that fear is an illusion, there's no such thing as bad ETs. But many would hear that and say, well, that's a ridiculous way of looking at that. In this matrix of duality, you can't look at fear as an illusion. That's absolutely ridiculous. So when it comes down to whether all ETs are benevolent or not, it's a point of view issue, and leave it at that. I think is the best way to look at that. But what I'm concerned about more, for the purposes of this interview, is whether is to the extent to which good and bad ETs are affecting life on Earth. Now, when you think of bad ETs, you think of like the reptilians of David Icke lore, the Anunnaki, also Zechariah Sitchin lore, although Sitchin wouldn't say they were all bad, but he did make it clear, like the Enlil factions, they weren't so nice to us. And also Greys from like Orion and Zeta Reticuli seem to be two locations that come up in regards to bad gray ETs. And when you talk about good ETs, you got like ET councils watching over us, higher dimensional crystalline ETs and such from like Andromeda Council, Ashtar Command, just throwing out terms there. But good and bad ETs influencing reality on Earth. When you think of this issue, what do you think of who the good ETs and the bad ETs are?
Well, that's a good question. I think that the human race has always been defined as the good and evil. All through our scriptures, there's good and there's evil. I think that one would have to assume that if you have different races of extraterrestrials, that you're going to have good and you're going to have evil. I think that some are going to be malevolent, some are not, some are going to be, have other, agendas. I mean, our own people, when we conquered somewhere, no matter who it was, whether it was Columbus or this one or that, it was always a takeover. You took over their land, and eventually you became the powerful person there. I think that that's what Hawkins was saying. He says, we're going to invite these people, come to Earth. That's what he's saying. We're telling everybody we're inviting them. And he said, you better be afraid of who you're inviting, because what logic tells him that's going to be somebody who's going to try to conquer us. Whether that's right or wrong, it does bring the fact that there's good and there's bad. And I think that, that's just the way of the world, no matter how big it is.
Damn straight on that one. And we may never know exactly how many different groups there actually are, because there's many different factions, many different groups, without question. Although the word on the street is well, tell me if you agree or disagree with this. It's been said that a lot of the bad ET groups are no longer affecting us. I mean, if you listen to those interviews that Andromeda Council contactee Tolek did with Alfred Weber back in 2011, he talked about how a lot of good ETs are helping us because, among other things, that earthquake that happened in like early 2011 that caused a crack in the Washington Monument, many in the ET contactee community field assert that was actually not a natural earthquake. It was good ETs shooting down some sort of an energy beam underground to destroy the malevolent reptilian bases under the Earth. Crazy as that may sound, that's what they assert. And as the Earth is rising in frequency, like ever since 2012, when the end of the Mayan calendar, that's the time when, like Jim Self asserts, we did enter the fourth dimension of consciousness in that time. We're not in the third, but because we still have a third dimensional frame of reference, we don't perceive it as being 4D, even though it is. So over the course of time, it's going to escalate, and over the course of time, the bad ETs are going to like be revealed. They're going to have to leave the Earth because they can't stick around because of their bad frequency. And by the way, Andrew Bartz is Akashic Records reader and Adronis, the ET contactee for Brad Johnson, when I had him on my show, said that the Anunnaki from Nibiru, they're no longer in our reality anymore. Thought I'd point that out. So do you think that there is truth to the claim that over the course of time the bad ETs will decrease in number on Earth, and it's soon going to be maybe another Golden Age Atlantis again?
I just think there's good and there's bad, and it's always going to be that way. And history has shown us that you have to look at, history is a big teller of what's going to happen in the future. And, as far as the different types of races that are out there, I mean, the issue is we don't even know. Nobody's actually, we don't really have proof other than, the myths about, Roswell and the bodies that they found and all that. Those folks that come out and say, we don't even know what an alien or another life form is like. I mean, we think of it as having a bodily form like us. I mean, do we really know that? I mean, it's just so, we know so little about this. We don't have any idea what a life form is going to look like. So to say that, and we don't even know how they're going to act, but I'm sure that there are different kinds of life forms out there, and I'm sure there's going to be some good and some bad. It's just the way it is, and I think history has told us that.
Yes, and on that note, back in the day, in like one of the first interviews I did on the show, I interviewed George Kavaslis, and he, when I asked him, what are the majority of UFOs that we see? I mean, it's got to be a percentage factor, like some UFOs belong to outer space and interdimensional ETs, some belong to the government, that's just highly advanced technology, some might be created from like the consciousness of Mother Earth, amongst things. So I asked him from a percentage standpoint, what are UFOs? And he said, well, yes, it is a percentage factor. There's different, and he also said it's also true with crop circles. Crop circles are not all created by the same force. There's different types of crop circles. But UFOs, he said, the majority of UFOs that we see have a direct connection to the military-industrial complex. And John Lear, in my interview with him, did assert that every military-industrial complex UFO does have some extraterrestrial connection nexus at some level to it. So that would mean that most UFOs we see are extraterrestrial by that common sense logic. Well, when Kavaslis told me that about most of them being military-industrial complex-wise, that was back in late 2013. And if you do subscribe to what I just mentioned about how over the course of the upcoming future, the good vibrations on Earth will increase, the bad vibrations will go down, the bad ETs can't stick around, so all these, that would mean that the amount of UFOs that we see that are military-industrial complex created, they would actually decrease in number, and some of the other types of UFOs that we see, like maybe the good ETs from space, would eventually soon at some point be the top of the percentage factor that we see. But do you think that still to this point it would make sense to say most likely, because you did talk about government involvement in your book, by the way, that the majority of UFOs that we see do have some military-industrial complex connection?
Well, if you study UFOs, and my second book, I do get into that, and this is a trilogy, and the second book gets into some of the things you're talking about. Do we believe that UFOs exist? It's unfortunate that you have some people that actually might have some real things to report, and there's some that are just, fake. And those fake ones, there's a lot of them, and they take away from maybe those UFOs that actually did occur and were credible. I think that a lot of them that have some credibility were, UFO sightings that occurred next to nuclear weapons facilities. There's one particular incident that occurred in England where, actually some credible people, some officers and that, had actually witnessed a UFO who was, they believe was researching or investigating a nuclear facility there that had basically the United States was using in England in order to protect Europe. There are many, many stories about military complexes and UFOs, and whether they're the fact that they were visiting these facilities that have nuclear weapons. There's a lot of them, so you got to wonder why they did that, whether they were trying to make sure that man didn't blow themselves up or whatever. But there are some credible ones. As far as UFOs are concerned, it's a shame that maybe some of these, and maybe there's not a whole lot, but maybe they were credible. But there's so many that were, faked or, and not so true, ended up hurting the credibility of those that occurred. The other thing that I find interesting is that the fact that someone who does see a UFO is immediately, thought as, someone who's is either lying or is crazy. I mean, you have pilots that, whether it's a UFO as we defined it or some kind of object out there that nobody can really identify, but they see things and they don't report it because they may lose their pilot license or they may be put on some shift of flying jets or airlines, jet planes that are not the greatest missions or the greatest assignments that there are. And they may get penalized, so they never say anything. There is just a negative connotation on those people that actually report these kind of things. So it's unfortunate because a lot of people probably would report them, but they're afraid that they're going to be looked upon as being crazy. It's interesting, whether, what percentage of these really are credible. More and more information is being researched. More and more people are getting involved in trying to document these things. But it's a crapshoot. You just don't know. But I would say there's really a small percentage, 1% of these are actually credible sightings, and it's unfortunate that the other ones exist and they kind of take away from the reality of the situation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate indeed. But you mentioned, I guess I'll give you time to talk about this. You said it's a trilogy of books. I wasn't aware of that. So I guess I might as well give you the chance to tell us this book that you're writing, and then that you said there's going to be another book after that. Correct if I'm wrong, or did you have more than one book besides just the book, The Beginning? Tell us about this trilogy and what's going to be in the upcoming books.
Yeah, the next book is called The Path to the Gods. And I've written 8 chapters of it so far, and I have a lot more to do. And trying to balance, running my company with, a hobby of, writing these books and researching them, and which is fun, by the way. I enjoy doing it, and I learn so much, whether it's, science fiction stuff or science or whatever. I do learn a lot when I research these things. And if you read my book, you'll see that one thing you'll come away with, hey, there was a lot of research there. This guy documented a lot of things. But yet at the same time, the next book is going to be based more on, sightings and the, astronauts that come forward that provide evidence about, different sightings that they've had or, experiences that they had. There's one chapter that's basically dedicated to the various different credible, I tried to provide the credible incidents that occurred over mankind's history, and they are documented in the book. The book and the first book ends with it's kind of interesting in that at the end the government was covering up the fact that there was UFOs, and there was a organization called MJ12 that throughout history you see references, whether it's people just saying that there's a group out there that was formed after Roswell of scientists, government officials, and they called it MJ12, and their job was to actually diffuse these sightings and discredit them. And so this group at the end, the president was a part of the conspiracy to cover these things up. And the book ends with the president deciding that enough is enough and the American people need to know the truth, and he wanted to disclose everything, through a 5-part plan to disclose the truth of over a period of almost 2 years. He was going to do this in phases. And then the chairman of the MJ-12, who was an oil tycoon, head of a corporation, he put a squash to it, and ended up he had more power than the president, and the president gets at the end gets taken away. So the second book starts on his comeback, okay, and he was able to escape, and that's where the book starts off, and we go from there. The third book, like I said, is a trilogy. At the end on the third book, I'm hoping that basically, I'm able to articulate something that I've been planning on unveiling as a part of the theory. So I'll have to wait till the third book to do that. But I am in the second book. I'm looking at probably a year and a half before that gets published. The first book, I got to be honest with you, was the first experience I ever had with writing a book. It was a learning experience. I'm sure that as I went through the first eight chapters of this book, I've learned a lot, and I think I've grown as a writer. I've got a lot more growing to do, but I enjoy it. It's a challenge, and to write well is a major challenge. And I give those people out there that do it well a lot of credit. I'm not there yet, but I'm working to be a better writer, and that's part of the challenge. And like I said, I enjoy doing it. I'm going to do the 3 books, and hopefully, eventually when I do retire, maybe I'll have more time to do it and get better at it every day.
I wish you the best of luck with that, and I do hope you make a lot of money off your books. And anybody out there who says you're writing books for the money, they're just saying that because they can't think of any other reason why you're doing it, and I can certainly think of a lot of reasons why you're doing it besides the money, and that is to bring this kind of fiction to real life, to wake up humanity. Good for you on that one. I love people like you who do that. People that expose truth under the guise of fiction. They're doing it.
Can I say something? I'm not doing it for the money. Believe me. Seriously, I'm not writing to make money. I just want people to open their eyes to it and consider it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. What I'm saying in the book is right. I'm just thinking that there's enough evidence there, okay, and enough credible people have witnessed things that people need to be open to it. I mean, what happens, are we really prepared if something does happen, if someone does come here? What's going to happen to our institutions? Are people going to panic? Are the financial institutions going to crumble? The religious institutions? What's going to happen? I mean, for something that is a possibility, I don't understand, or maybe there is something out there where, people are prepared for something like this. I mean, maybe there is a secret government agency that has a plan in case something like this happens. But given the probability of stars and galaxies out there, I mean, there's a real possibility that this could happen. And, are we prepared for it?
Well, that's a fair question, and you may want to check out my interview with Ray Kusalanich, because he talked about how all of his people that he communicates with in the ET world are saying that 2017 is when they will start showing themselves. And I asked him, are you sure that the ETs would want to do something like that? I mean, is it good? Many would say it's going to be another another Orson Welles War of the Worlds type radio broadcast scenario thing where there's going to be chaos in the streets and all hell's going to break loose, and your space brothers are out of their minds if they say that they want to show themselves to the human race. So, Michael, do you think that if the ET show themselves, there's going to be chaos in the streets and another Orson Welles War of the Worlds radio broadcast all over again scenario?
Well, again, there's good in the world and there's evil in the world. I mean, who's to know? Again, you get back to the probability of how many possible, planets out there that have life. It could be incredible. And then, there's so many of them. Are they going to be bad or are they going to be good? And, those that find Earth, you don't know which one's going to find it. I mean, to me, it gets down to, I just can't believe that the human race is the only life form in the world, giving what you just look out in the sky and look at the stars and look how many stars and how many planets there are. To me, it's really parochial. I think that we're the only ones that have intelligent life, that the Earth is the only place. And that, to me, is enough evidence to prove that the possibility of this happening is big, and I'm just not sure we're prepared for it. And, whether good or bad. I mean, can you imagine something like this happening, what kind of impact it's going to have? Some people say it's not going to have any impact at all. I believe it will, and I believe that, I just hope that we're prepared for it, that someone there is in government or powers that be is prepared to deal with this.
And on that note, you mentioned how in your book the president decides that the people need to know. Well, of course, anybody who saw the movie Independence Day knows that the president was not told about any sort of an ET cover-up. And when he went to Area 51 in the movie and was asked, why wasn't I told, the answer he got was plausible deniability. So are you of the opinion that the movie Independence Day portrayed it wrong, the president of the United States, regardless of who the president is, regardless of how high he is on the powers that be ladder of authority, he would know about the ET cover-up and is basically told to keep his mouth shut, or he'd probably lose his job and his life? Do you think that's how it actually works?
Could be. I think it's a need-to-know basis. Maybe some of the presidents didn't know. Some of the presidents might have known. I mean, there are stories that Eisenhower knew. There's stories that Truman knew early on, when there was a lot of flurry about UFOs and things of that nature in the 50s and early 60s. I would say this. It depends on a lot. I mean, did they brief Obama about this when he became president of the United States? I don't think so. I think if it's a need to know, they're going to someone knows about these things. The Vatican, first of all, for years has been denying this, and actually the science that they were promoting is extremely archaic to what actually is now. Just the fact that they supported the concept that the Earth was the center of the universe, for years, and they kept it. Any other thinking about this, they discredited. So more recently, the church has come out and they have been favorable to saying that there is other life in the universe. They got a pretty heavy group of telescopes and scientists and things of that themselves. So, why would they say that? Why would they say that there's most likely there's intelligent life and the other intelligent life in the universe? One would wonder, are they positioning themselves to say, okay, our God is the God of the universe, of everybody? Is that what, do they know something? I don't know. I just find it really interesting that all of a sudden the Vatican came out and made such statements like that. And it was supported at the top from, everything that I read. So, they're the presidents now. I would imagine they just don't go briefing each, one on it. And it's only when there's a need to know that they're brought into it. I would suspect. I don't know. I have no information other than what I read, what you read. I would say that there's a group of, an organization that knows a lot, that's covered up a lot, and that and the reason being is that they're afraid of losing power, or they're afraid of losing control, and that's why this information is often discredited. Every time you turn around, there's something that basically they can't explain, so they deny it, or they ridicule the person that's witnessed it. So I think history tells you that, and unfortunately, because of that, when there's something really happens, people aren't afraid. They're afraid to report it. They like to forget about it because they know that it's not going to be good for them.
Yeah, people need to stop worrying about their reputations because the fear of what other people think is the worst prison ever. But people think it's too valuable to lose, sadly. But with that being said, governments having like control of space to some degree. I think maybe we'll talk about this. I don't know how much research you've done on this, if you have, but people have said, like the NSA, for example, the NSA Data Collection Center in Utah and the NSA headquarters at Fort Meade are just a dollhouse in a kiddie pool compared to what the NSA has up above the atmosphere. It's been said, like the NSA, for example, has bases on the moon, among other things. So do you have anything to say about government technology above the Earth's atmosphere?
Well, not really. I don't know what kind of things they would have in mind. I do believe that one of my concerns are that our information that we have is now becoming more centralized. If you look at the various data centers that now called cloud computing, okay, is concerning in that we're all consolidating all our information. And then when you look at this, very closely, the government is supporting that kind of thing, especially with the financial institutions and the regulations. They want everything to go up into this perfectly data centers that they have, rather than sit on their own individual servers, where it was more distributed. So now you got all this information, pockets of information, kind of centralized, and Microsoft is a big houser of this information. All the various other, Amazon. And so if you start looking at it, you say, wow, 70% of our information may be in 5 locations. These powers that be could be mining this information, for whatever reason, good or bad, I don't know. And it's concerning from the standpoint of, we're putting all our eggs in a few baskets, and it's also subject to terrorism. People can, somehow hack in it, and it's proven that they have. I mean, they've hacked into government databases, in the last 5 to 6 years. I mean, it's been pretty incredible. Universities, things of that nature, people's Social Security getting compromised. Their numbers are getting compromised. Their bank accounts. I mean, it's happening every day, and I think it's concerning that all our information is getting consolidated into a few places where, if you look at it before, even small businesses all had their own servers, banks had their own servers, and it was so dispersed that it would be difficult to hack and get a lot of information. But today for whatever reasons, we're consolidating our information into 5 or 6 major data centers.
Okay, out of curiosity, in your book, the beginning, and also in your future books in the trilogy, what kind of race of extraterrestrial did you depict in your books? Was it a gray race, reptilian race, like a human-like race, like the Anunnaki were, or something completely different? And why would you choose that race? Just out of curiosity.
Well, first of all, I don't like to use the word race because of some of the connotations you could have with that. I think I like to use the word beings, the different kinds of beings. I'm sure there's different kinds of life forms, some like humans, some not. The possibilities with the numbers out there, I mean, of what kind of intelligent life you could have, it's just, I don't know if I want to think parochial, think that everybody's going to look like a human or a reptile or something like that. I don't know. It's too big of a thing for me to think about. What I tried to do in the book is to draw some conclusions, because I needed to draw some conclusions. I basically said that when Earth got colonized 400,000 years ago, that it basically was divided up into segments, and those segments ultimately represented the the extraterrestrials that conquered them. It's almost like colonies. We colonized the Americas when we discovered it, and I would venture to say that they would have done the same thing. And possibly, the book goes in, and again, it's a science fiction book, but it goes in to say that those individuals had an impact on those people in those areas. Their physical traits and things of that nature. Interesting concept, true or not, it's science fiction,
And considering that seems like less and less people, maybe it's changing and fluctuating over time, but it seems like a lot of people don't read books much nowadays as they used to. So with that being said, do you think you might want to someday pursue the idea of having Hollywood or some movie industry bring your books to the big screen for the sake of getting the info out to those people who don't like to read books?
Well, let me just say this. This is a tough business. Again, I'm not in this to make money. I did it out of enjoyment, something I wanted to do all my life. It's first of all writing a book and then getting it published and then going through the people that have done it over the years. I got to give them a lot of credit, and it's an incredible, feat to accomplish. And believe me, again, I know my weaknesses, and I'm not the greatest author in the world, but I did do it. As far as other medias are concerned, people don't read anymore. That's the truth. But some people do. So you're gonna, hopefully those people buy your books and enjoy them, no matter what it is, whether it's a history book, a science fiction book, whatever. People will always read, okay. But the younger generation seems more interested in having stories told to them rather than read. It's more convenient. It's more easier to watch a movie for 2 hours and try to figure out from that, what the author's trying to say, or what point he's getting across, and that kind of thing. Or if he's not getting any point at all, and there's some nonsense about vampires or something like that. I'm not being critical about that, but we tend to enjoy movies that are sometimes not realistic and more of a fantasy kind of thing, and that's a form of entertainment. I would hate to see that the written word and books go away for some other form of media, whether that's a movie or who knows, all this three-dimensional stuff that you're seeing now, and who knows what kind of entertainment there's going to be in the future and how they're going to tell stories. But I would think that the written word will still be around for years and years and years. And as far as me in a book, as far as me in a movie is concerned, I have big enough time writing a book and getting that published. I'm sure the Hollywood people aren't knocking on my door, but if they did, that would be great. But I don't have those kind of thoughts.
Okay, fair enough. So unfortunately, there's only about 4 minutes left on the live feed, and I don't really think we're going to have time for any more questions. So I guess I might as well bring the show to an end at this point, and I guess I'll do that by telling you the thing that I tell all my guests is obviously the most emotional part of the show, but it's kind of a gig of sorts. Well, first of all, in the future, if by any chance you are interested in maybe coming out to some sort of medium, like a public medium of sorts, to when you finish your books, you want to talk about some new discoveries, so to speak, that you find, by all means, give me a buzz, and I can give you like maybe a half an hour to an hour special to talk about your book. But to tell you the truth, as far as me contacting you or any of my other previous guests that I've ever had on my show goes, the truth is, Michael, ever since I started doing this show, I've always had a mission of sorts, an obligation of sorts, to try to get as many different people on my show as I possibly can before I give any one specific guest double dips, because I've always felt that was the fairest, most impartial, and most informative way of doing a show that seeks to expose the true and false nature of reality. So even though you're more than welcome to contact me to come on for like a short special, and I do that for you, be more than willing to. As far as me contacting you or any of my other guests goes, I probably won't be doing that, but please understand that's only because I need to give thousands of other fascinating individuals a chance to have some glory on my show. But I love this interview. It was very fascinating. I don't think I've ever done this before until now, having a guest on who can bring fiction to real life. You did a very good job of it. Certainly will convince a lot of people. I wish you the best of luck, and maybe someday you won't have to do any work. Maybe somebody will decide your books are worth making movies out of. So if that ever happens, I hope it's done well, and I hope it'll wake people up if it ever does. So good luck. Good luck on your future endeavors. It was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Michael, and good luck.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Okay, folks, that is the end of this show. A couple things I need to point out, first of all, before I get to my next guest. Unfortunately, planetinfowars.com doesn't seem to be anymore. That website was kind of losing popularity. I point that out because I had a Nature of Reality radio group on that website, and I would often every single week put an new event on for the shows. The Planet Infowars seems to be no more. I guess they decided it wasn't getting any popularity, so they got rid of it. So I'm not going to be uploading anything on Planet Infowars anymore. So right now, the Nature of Reality Radio Facebook group and also blogger.com, specifically naturerealityradio.blogspot.com, are the two places where I will be archiving all my interviews and such. So that is the end of this show. And next week on the show, I will be having Matthew Bueno. Don't remember off the top of my head what his website is, but I should know because I listened to a lot of shows that he did with C.J. Miller of N5G Radio back in the day, and they were pretty fascinating interviews. So he's a shaman, a healer, a very metaphysical guy. Tried to get him to call my show before, but he said he couldn't do it because of his kids and all that. But next week I should be having Matthew Bueno. So a lot of that'll be a big audience because he's got a lot of followers. My chat room should be pretty full next week. So that's the end of this show, folks. This is Andrew Fisher signing off from Nature of Reality Radio, and namaste. Enjoy the rest of your trek through infinite consciousness.